Nick Paul's father died, and now he lives with his mother. She only cares about Nick becoming a decent person. He is an excellent student and is in good standing with the teachers. For his birthday, Nick's mother gives him an expensive watch with an engraving, and he himself is thinking about killing himself. Nick has a friend, Pete, and he bought a stolen mobile phone from Annie Newton and her gang. Now they demand money from him for the phone, threatening to kill him. Noticing a cut on his friend's finger, Nick goes to talk to Annie. He gives her the money for Pete's mobile phone, but the girl does not take it. Then Nick calls her a loser and gets punched in the face for his words. Not everything is okay at home with Annie. Her mother died, and her stepmother stares at the TV all day and does not care about Annie's little brother. At night, Annie leaves to steal a car with her friend Marcus. She is supposed to be on guard, but problems at home cause Annie to go crazy and she robs a jewelry store before stealing a car. That same night, Pete comes to see Nick, and he tells his friend that he is planning to run away from home. He wants to go to London to take a literature course at the Royal Academy and has even bought a ticket. The trip is scheduled for tomorrow. Annie spends the night at Marcus's. In the morning, they argue over stolen jewelry. Realizing that he cannot influence his girlfriend, Marcus calls the police and turns Annie in. When she gets to school, the girl hides the jewelry in her locker. Pete notices this. In the middle of the school day, the police come for her and arrest her. Annie sees Pete watching the arrest and realizes that he turned her in. At the station, she is charged and released on bail. Her trial will be in a few days. Annie calls Marcus and promises to deal with the one who snitched to the police. Returning home, Nick finds out that his mother also knows about her son's departure. She received a call from the airport and was informed that her flight was postponed. Nick understands that he let his mother down. He goes to a friend's party with mixed feelings. Pete is caught by Annie and her friends. They beat him up, and he confesses that Nick turned Annie into the police. At this point, he would say anything to avoid reprisals. Pete is sure that Nick is now halfway to London, and Annie will not get him. At the party, Nick changes his mind about going to London. He gives his ticket to his girlfriend and goes home on foot. On the way, Annie and her gang hit him with their car. They drive him into the woods and beat him up. Annie makes Pete watch her friend being beaten. Then Annie herself gets involved. However, Nick does not remain silent. He calls her a loser again and gets kicked in the face for it. He falls head first onto the rocks. Annie's friends examine him and realize that he was murdered. Together with Pete, they take Nick's body to an abandoned sewer and throw it down to hide the body. Then Annie goes to Marcus, asking him to confirm her alibi when the police arrive. Having learned that the girl killed a schoolboy, Marcus drives her away. He already has a criminal record, he was released on parole, and he does not want to end up in prison again because of Annie. In the morning, Nick realizes that he is in the forest. He gets up and goes to school. No one notices him here. Everything happens as if in a nightmare. Classmates talk about him as if he is not there. Nick screams, throws objects, but nothing happens. Moreover, a second later it turns out that the objects he threw are lying quietly in place. Seeing all this, frightened, Nick realizes that he died. There he sees the police and realizes that his mother has reported him missing. He sees a broken car mirror, traces of a struggle on the side of the road, and tells his partner that they need to assemble a search party and comb this forest. He also wants to visit Annie. She and Nick recently had a conflict, and this version needs to be checked. However, a conversation with Annie does not yield anything. She says that she was with Marcus the whole time. Nick is also present during the conversation, although no one sees him. Brian Larson organizes a search for Nick. Brian's partner Kate is watching him. Nick is lying in his bed. His mother comes into the room, takes her son's notebook and reads the last poem he wrote. When she leaves, Nick hears a bird hitting the glass. It falls on the shelf with the bird feeder, and that appears on Nick's shoulder. And he sees that the bird is still breathing outside, and when it stops breathing, it disappears from Nick's room. He realizes that he is still alive. Nick runs into the forest, where volunteers are looking for him. Attracts the attention of a search dog, and he finds the watch that Nick's mother gave him for his birthday. The dog sees Nick, but something distracts him, and he runs away from the sewer collector where the body is hidden. In the evening, Pete admits that he will go to the police and tell everything. Annie threatens him that he will also be imprisoned for complicity in murder. Annie goes home, and Nick follows. He sees how the girl touchingly says goodbye to her younger brother and understands that Annie was simply unlucky in life. Because of this, she became so cruel. The girl collects her things and is about to leave, but then her father enters the room. He kicks her out of the house, does not want to have anything to do with her anymore. Nick, who is following the girl, sees all this. Detective Larson goes to visit Marcus. He asks him about Annie and Nick, but he says he knows nothing about the incident. Then Larson hints that if Marcus is stubborn, he will be sent back to prison for carjacking. Nick returns home, sees his reasonable and unfeeling mother, yells at her, and then realizes that, despite her outward calm, she is crushed by his disappearance. Pity for his mother awakens in him. He sees how hard it is for her now. Marcus finds Pete and, threatening him with a gun, forces him to take him to Nick's body. Marcus does not want to be found, and then drags the body to another place. From Marcus, Pete learns that the police are following him. Having finished messing around with Nick's body, Marcus forces Annie's friends to arrange a meeting with her. However, the girl senses a catch, so she calls Pete and sends him to meet her instead. Nick is nearby. He sees Pete being squeezed and attracts Kate's attention. She goes after Pete. On the bridge, Pete meets Annie's friends, and she watches him from below. Marcus was more cunning. He tracked the girl down and brought her to the bridge, threatening her with a gun. He sends Pete away, and he himself wants to deal with Annie, but the girl is not one to be timid. She herself puts the barrel of the gun to her chest. The police save them from a treacherous outcome. Annie has to run away, and when Nick shouts after her, she hears him. Nick understands this and follows. The girl comes to the club to sell the ring that she stole from a jewelry store. Then she stays at the club to relax and dance. Nick is there all the time. In the morning, Annie goes to her mother's grave to say goodbye. Nick consoles her, understanding how much pain she is in now. Then the girl goes to school. In her locker, she hides the money she got from selling the ring. She leaves it for her brother. After that, Annie washes and goes to bed. Nick sleeps next to her. Waking up, Nick realizes that Annie is gone. She snuck into his house. He looks at old photographs. Nick sees that the girl has always had warm feelings for him, and he becomes even more attached to her. They have become closer in these days than in all the years since. When Nick's mother enters the room, Annie runs away. She goes to the sewer to get Nick out, but he is no longer there. She saw a package of nicotine gum that Pete was chewing near the sewer. Annie finds a guy to ask about Nick. Pete refers to Marcus, and the girl goes after him. Pointing a gun at him, she takes her former friend to the cliff and makes him tell her where Nick's body is now. Nick is next to his friend at this time. Pete puts on a decent suit and decides to commit suicide. Being on the verge of life and death, he sees Nick and tells her where his body is now. He and Marcus dumped him on the rocks near the dam. When the dam is opened, the body will be washed away and it will not be found. When Annie was leaving, Marcus shot her, and the girl shot back. Annie, wounded, called the police to tell them where Nick's body was. After making sure that his parents had found Pete, Nick went to the dam. He did everything to ensure that his body was found and taken to the hospital. Nick is still on the verge of life and death, so Annie sneaks into the hospital to help him. Nick leads her. He makes his mother believe that Annie can hear him, and she lets the girl into the ward. There, Annie lies down on Nick's bed and slowly dies from her wound, giving him her life. When Nick comes to, Annie manages to say that she really wanted to do something good and then dies. When Nick was discharged from the hospital, he went to the place where Annie promised to take her brother. There the boy launched his airplane. Nick offered to write Annie a letter. They wrote a greeting on the wings of the airplane and launched it into the sky.